The marble floors of the Sinclair Foundation gleamed under crystal chandeliers as I clutched my worn violin case, feeling distinctly out of place among the designer suits and expensive perfumes. At 23, I was the youngest musician, auditioning for the prestigious position of principal violinist for Victoria Sinclair's private orchestra, an opportunity that could change everything. Number 47 called the assistant, her clipboard held like a shield against the nervous energy radiating from waiting musicians. That was me. Elena Martinez, scholarship kid from Queens, daughter of a seamstress and a taxi driver, somehow standing in a Fifth Avenue penthouse, about to play for one of the wealthiest women in New York. The performance hall took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, and the acoustics were perfect. I could tell just from the way my footsteps echoed. But my attention fixed on the woman seated alone in the center of the room, Victoria Sinclair. Even seated, she radiated power. She couldn't have been more than 35, with sharp cheekbones, platinum blonde hair pulled into an immaculate chignon, and eyes the color of steel. Her charcoal suit probably cost more than my entire year's rent. She didn't look up from her phone as I entered. "Name," she said, her voice crisp and dismissive. "Elena Martinez." "And what will you be playing for us today, Miss Martinez?" Still no eye contact. "Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3 in G major. The first movement." Finally she looked up. Her eyes swept over me, taking in my thrift store blazer, my scuffed shoes, my calloused fingers. A smirk played at the corner of her perfectly painted lips. "Mozart," she said, and somehow made the name sound like an insult. How predictable. Heat rushed to my cheeks, but I lifted my chin. "It's a classic for a reason." "Oh, I'm well aware." She set down her phone with deliberate care. "I studied at Juilliard, after all. Before I inherited my father's empire, I was quite the accomplished pianist." "But please," she waved a manicured hand dismissively, "sing this Mozart for me. Show me what a scholarship student from," she glanced at her notes, "Queens Community College Conservatory can do." The condescension in her voice was like a slap. Around the room, I noticed other people, a pianist, an assistant, a few board members, all watching with varying degrees of discomfort or anticipation. This was a test, I realized. Not just of my playing, but of my composure. "I don't sing, Miss Sinclair," I said evenly. "I play. How unfortunate." She leaned back, crossing her legs. "Because I find that true musicians can make their instruments sing. Can you do that, Miss Martinez? Or are you just another technically proficient player with no soul?" Something in me snapped. Not into anger, but into focus. This woman wanted to see me fail, wanted to confirm whatever prejudices she held about people like me. Fine, let her watch. I raised my violin to my shoulder, closed my eyes, and let the first notes flow. Mozart's Third Violin Concerto is playful, joyful, a conversation between instrument and orchestra. But without the orchestra, it becomes something more intimate, more vulnerable. I poured everything into those notes, every slight I'd endured, every door closed in my face, every person who'd looked at me the way Victoria Sinclair just had. But also every triumph, every moment of pure musical joy. Every reason I'd fallen in love with the violin at age 7, I made it sing. The room disappeared. There was only the music, flowing through me like a current. My bow danced across the strings, coaxing out harmonics, vibrato. Passages that soared and dove and sang with everything I had. When I played the final note and opened my eyes, the room was silent. Victoria Sinclair was no longer lounging in her chair. She was leaning forward, lips parted, one hand pressed against her chest. Her carefully constructed mask had cracked, and beneath it I saw something raw surprise. Maybe even wonder. Our eyes met across the space, and for a moment, neither of us moved. "That was," she started, then stopped. Cleared her throat. "That was adequate." Adequate. The word hung in the air, absurd after what had just happened. The pianist behind her looked shocked. Even the assistant's professional neutrality had slipped. "Just adequate?" I heard myself say. Victoria stood abruptly, smoothing her suit. "You have technical proficiency, Miss Martinez, but what?" I stepped forward, emboldened by frustration and the adrenaline still coursing through me. "I made that violin sing. You know I did." "I saw your face." Her eyes flashed dangerously. "You saw what exactly?" I saw that I moved you. I saw that for 30 seconds, you forgot to be cruel. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop on those marble floors. Victoria's jaw tightened. She moved toward me with the grace of a predator, closing the distance until we were mere feet apart. Up close, she was even more striking and more intimidating. She smelled like expensive perfume and power. You have no idea what you saw, she said quietly, but her voice shook just slightly. And you have no idea who you're speaking to. I'm speaking to someone who used to love music, I said, surprised by my own boldness. Before she forgot how. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at me. Her chest rose and fell with careful breaths. Then, to my shock, she laughed a short, bitter sound. Get out, she said. Miss Sinclair, the assistant began, everyone out, now. Victoria's command was absolute. The room emptied in seconds, leaving just the two of us in that vast space overlooking the park. My heart hammered against my ribs. I just torpedoed my one chance at this position, at stability, at everything I'd worked for, but I couldn't quite bring myself to regret it. Victoria walked to the windows, her back to me. You're right, she said finally, her voice so quiet I almost missed it. I did forget. My father, Victoria continued, still facing the window, built this empire from nothing. He gave me every advantage, the best schools, the best teachers. I was supposed to be a concert pianist. Did you know that? I shook my head, then realized she couldn't see me. No, I was good. Not great, but good. I was performing at Carnegie Hall at 19. She traced a finger along the window frame. And then he got sick, cancer. Someone had to take over the business. And my brother was too busy spending the family fortune in Monaco. She turned to face me, and I was startled to see her mask had fallen away entirely. She looked tired, human. So I gave it up. The music, everything, and I told myself it didn't matter. That running a multi-billion-dollar corporation was more important than chasing some romantic dream of being an artist. She laughed softly. I haven't touched a piano in 10 years. Haven't wanted to. Until today, I said softly. Until today. She studied me with those sharp eyes. You made me remember what it felt like. To lose myself in music. To feel something other than the weight of quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. We stood there in silence. The afternoon sun casting long shadows across the floor. I'm sorry I mocked you, Victoria said. And the apology sounded like it cost her something. I've become hard, cruel as you said. It's armor. But that's no excuse. Why did you? I asked. Why the test? Because I'm terrified, she admitted. Terrified that I've lost the ability to appreciate what I once loved. I needed to know if music could still move me or if I'd become too numb, too cynical. And you, she gestured at me, with your fire and your passion, you were so painfully sincere. So real. I wanted to break that in you to prove that idealism doesn't survive in the real world. But I didn't break. No, a ghost of a smile crossed her lips. You didn't. She moved to a desk in the corner, pulled out a folder, returned to hand it to me. The position is yours if you want it. Double the advertised salary. Full benefits. You'll be performing at private events, recording sessions, teaching if you're interested. I stared at the contract, my mind reeling. Why, after what I said to you? Because you were the only one brave enough to say it. And because, she hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her features. I need someone in my life who still remembers why music matters. Who can remind me? I should have just taken the contract. Should have thanked her and left. But something made me ask, is that all you need? Victoria's breath caught. What are you suggesting, Miss Martinez? I'm not sure, I admitted. But the way you looked at me just now, that wasn't just about the music, was it? The air between us became charged, electric. Victoria took a step closer. You should leave, she said, but her feet carried her nearer still. Should I? I'm your employer now. This is inappropriate. I haven't signed anything yet. We were close enough now that I could see the gold flecks in her gray eyes. Could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. You have no idea what you're playing with, Victoria whispered. Then teach me. Her control snapped. She closed the remaining distance and kissed me fierce and desperate, like she'd been drowning and I was air. I dropped my violin case, my hands finding her waist, pulling her closer. She tasted like coffee and lipstick and something indefinable that made my head spin. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria's carefully styled hair had come loose and her lipstick was smudged. She looked younger, more alive. She started. A mistake? I offered. I was going to say inevitable. She traced my jawline with one finger. From the moment you walked in here with your worn violin case and your defiant eyes, I was gone. You hid it well. I've had practice hiding what I feel. She stepped back, trying to regain her composure. But this complicates things. Does it have to? Elena, I'm a public figure. I have a reputation to maintain, a company to run. I can't just what? Feel something? Want someone? I picked up the contract. You're offering me a job. That's professional. What happens between us off the clock is nobody's business but ours. Victoria studied me and I could see her mind working through possibilities and consequences. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is. Maybe you've just forgotten how to let things be simple. She laughed genuinely this time, the sound lighter than before. You're dangerous, Elena Martinez. I prefer persistent. Stay, she said suddenly. Not for the audition. Just stay, have dinner with me. Let me apologize properly for being awful to you. I should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Should have protected my heart from someone who could destroy it with her power and wealth and casual cruelty. Instead, I said I'd like that. Victoria's private chef prepared a meal that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But we barely touched it. We were too busy talking, really talking. She told me about growing up in Manhattan, about the pressure of being a Sinclair, about losing herself in music as a child because it was the only place. No one demanded anything from her. I told her about my family, about my father saving for 2 years to buy my first real violin, about playing on subway platforms to earn money for strings and rosin, about the teachers who believed in me when I couldn't afford their fees. You're so proud, Victoria observed, refilling my wine glass. We'd moved to her living room, a space of clean lines and expensive art that somehow felt empty despite its opulence. I have to be, I said. Pride is sometimes all we have. That's not what I meant. She curled up on the opposite end of the sofa, barefoot now, her suit jacket discarded. I mean proud in a good way. You know who you are. You haven't compromised yourself to fit in. Neither have you really. You just wear a different costume. She considered this. Maybe, but I've forgotten which parts are costume and which are real. Play something, I said suddenly. Victoria froze. What? You said you haven't touched a piano in 10 years. There's one right there. I gestured to the grand piano by the windows, draped with a cloth like a ghost. Play for me. I can't or won't. Her jaw tightened, that defensive reflex again. But then something shifted in her expression. You're insufferable, I've been told. She stood, moving to the piano with visible reluctance. She removed the cloth with careful hands, revealing gleaming black wood and pristine ivory keys. She sat, fingers hovering over the keys, not quite touching them. What if I've forgotten? She whispered. What if it's gone? I moved to stand beside the piano. Then you'll remember. Muscle memory doesn't disappear. Victoria took a deep breath and let her fingers fall to the keys. The first notes were tentative, uncertain Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. But as the melody unfolded, her confidence grew. The music filled the space, achingly beautiful and melancholic, and I watched her transform. The hard edges softened. Her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes closed and tears began streaming down her face, though she kept playing. It was like watching someone come home after a long exile. When the final notes faded, she sat motionless, hands resting on the keys. I forgot how much I missed it, she said, voice thick with emotion. How much I missed myself. I knelt beside the piano bench. You don't have to forget anymore. She looked at me, vulnerable in a way I suspected few people ever saw. You barely know me. Why do you care? Because I know what it's like to love something so much it hurts. And I know what it's like to have people tell you that love isn't practical, isn't enough. I took her hand. But it is enough, Victoria. It has to be. She pulled me up onto the bench beside her, our shoulders touching. Play with me. I don't play piano. I'll teach you. She guided my hands to the keys, her fingers over mine. Just feel it. We played a simple melody together, her hands leading mine, and it was clumsy and imperfect and absolutely perfect. When we finished, neither of us moved. Our hands remained intertwined on the keys, her breath warm against my neck. I haven't let myself want anything personal in so long, Victoria murmured. It's terrifying. What do you want? I asked softly. Instead of answering, she turned my face toward hers and kissed me again, slower this time, deeper. Her hands tangled in my hair and I tasted salt from her tears. When we finally broke apart, we were both trembling. Stay tonight, she breathed against my lips. Not for anything else, just stay. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, I couldn't remember where I was. Then it came back, Victoria's penthouse, falling asleep in her guest room after hours of talking and kissing and learning each other's stories. I found her in the kitchen, still in her silk pajamas, attempting to operate an elaborate espresso machine with a look of intense concentration. Did your chef leave instructions? I asked from the doorway. She jumped, nearly dropping a tiny cup. I gave her the day off. I thought I could manage coffee. I was wrong. She glared at the machine. This thing costs $12,000. You think it would be intuitive? I laughed and moved to help her. Here, let me. Of course you know how to work it. I worked at a coffee shop to pay for lessons. This is actually simpler than the setup we had. I pulled 2 perfect espressos and handed her one. Victoria took a sip, then smiled, a real unguarded smile that transformed her entire face. Show off, always. We took our coffee to her terrace, overlooking Central Park in the early morning light. The city was waking up, but here, stories above it all, everything felt peaceful. I have a board meeting in 2 hours, Victoria said, the real world creeping back in. And you'd have that contract to review. Right, the contract. I'd almost forgotten about the job offer in the midst of everything else. Elena, about last night, she started. But I cut her off. Don't tell me it was a mistake or that we should forget it happened. I was going to say that I don't regret it, she said quietly. Any of it. But I'm not sure how to navigate this. I haven't let myself feel this way about anyone in. Honestly, I'm not sure I ever have. Feel what way? She met my eyes. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff and the fall might kill me, or it might be the most exhilarating thing I've ever experienced. My heart stuttered. And what are you going to do about it? I'm going to be honest with you about what this would mean. She set down her coffee. Dating me comes with complications. My sexuality isn't public knowledge. My PR team has worked very hard to keep my private life private. There will be events you can't attend as my date, moments where I have to pretend you're just my employee. The press can be vicious. People in my world can be judgmental. Are you trying to scare me off? I'm trying to be fair. You deserve to know what you'd be getting into. I considered this. My life had been hard in different ways, financial struggles, fighting to be taken seriously in elite musical spaces, always being the outsider. But I never had to hide who I was or who I loved. I won't pretend it won't be difficult, I said slowly. But I think you're worth difficult. What I won't accept is being your secret shame. Never that, Victoria said fiercely. She took my hand. You could never be that. If anything, I'm ashamed of my own cowardice. Then be brave with me. I squeezed her fingers. We don't have to figure everything out today. But we can decide to try. I want to try, she whispered. God help me, I really do. Then that's enough for now. The next few weeks were a careful dance. Professionally, I threw myself into my new role. Victoria's private orchestra was world-class, and I had to prove I deserved the principal position. Some musicians were skeptical. I was young, unknown, and there were whispers about how I'd landed the job. Let them whisper. My playing spoke for itself. Victoria and I were cautious. Stolen moments in her office after everyone left. Late-night phone calls that stretched until dawn. Dinners at her penthouse where we could be ourselves without watching eyes. But the hiding grated on me. There's a gala next week, Victoria mentioned one evening as we lay tangled together on her couch. My head on her chest, her fingers running through my hair. For the foundation. You'll be performing. Will you introduce me? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Her fingers stilled. Elena. I know. I'm your employee. That's the story. I sat up, putting distance between us. I just wonder sometimes if that's all I'll ever be. In public, at least. That's not fair. Isn't it? Victoria, I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already have. But I can't keep existing in the shadows of your life. She looked stricken. You think I'm not falling too? I think about you constantly. You've brought light back into my life. But I have responsibilities. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your responsibilities. I'm asking you to choose yourself. To stop living in fear of what other people think. Easy for you to say. You're not the one whose every move is scrutinized by shareholders and tabloids. No, I'm just the one who grew up knowing I wasn't good enough for spaces like yours. Who fought for every single opportunity while people like you had everything handed to them. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. Victoria's face went cold. Is that what you think? That I haven't fought for anything? That's not what I meant. I gave up everything I loved to keep my father's legacy alive. I work 16-hour days. I've sacrificed relationships, friendships, my own happiness. So don't you dare suggest I don't understand sacrifice. We stared at each other, both hurt and angry. Maybe this was a mistake, Victoria said quietly. We're from different worlds. We want different things. If that's what you really think, then I'll go. I stood gathering my things. But I think you're just scared. And you're using our differences as an excuse to avoid taking a risk. Elena, call me when you figure out what you actually want, Victoria. Because I know what I want. I want someone who's proud to be with me, not someone who hides me away like a guilty secret. I left before she could respond, my heart breaking with every step. The week before the gala was torture. Victoria and I maintained professional courtesy at rehearsals, but the warmth between us had frozen over. She was back to being Miss Sinclair crisp, commanding, untouchable. I threw myself into preparing for the performance, channeling my heartbreak into the music. The night of the gala. The Sinclair Foundation ballroom was transformed into a wonderland of crystal and light. Manhattan's elite filled the space in designer gowns and tuxedos. I watched from backstage, feeling like an outsider once again. Victoria was in her element, gliding through the crowd in a stunning black gown that probably cost 6 figures. Charm and confidence radiating from her. She was every inch the billionaire philanthropist, the powerful executive, the untouchable ice queen. She was magnificent. And she was miserable. I could see it in the tightness around her eyes. The brittleness of her smile. 5 minutes. Ms. Martinez, the stage manager, called. I took my position, violin in hand, trying to center myself. This was the performance that would either establish me or destroy my reputation. No pressure, the lights dimmed. I walked onto the stage to polite applause. Found Victoria in the crowd. She was seated at a table near the front. Her expression unreadable. I raised my violin and began to play. I'd chosen Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto, one of the most technically demanding and emotionally powerful pieces in the repertoire. But I wasn't thinking about technique. I was thinking about everything I couldn't say to Victoria. Everything I felt and feared and hoped for. I played for the girl who'd fallen in love with music at 7. Who'd practiced until her fingers bled. I played for the woman who'd forgotten how to let herself want anything. I played for us, for what we could have been, what we still might be if we were brave enough. The music soared and wept and raged. I poured my whole heart into it, holding nothing back, and somewhere in the second movement, I saw Victoria's carefully maintained composure crack. Saw her press a hand to her mouth. Saw tears streaming down her face as she stood abruptly and left the ballroom. I almost faltered, but the music carried me through. I played the finale with everything I had left, and when the last note faded, the audience erupted. I barely registered the standing ovation. I set down my violin with shaking hands and ran. I found Victoria on a terrace overlooking the city, her back to the door, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Victoria, I said softly. She spun around. That was how dare you, but she couldn't finish the sentence. She closed the distance between us and kissed me desperately, her hands framing my face, tears still streaming. I'm sorry, she gasped between kisses. I'm so sorry. You were right. About everything. I've been a coward. Victoria, no, let me say this, please. She pulled back just enough to look at me, her makeup ruined, her hair disheveled, more real than I'd ever seen her. I've spent 10 years building walls, telling myself that control was more important than happiness. That reputation was more important than truth. And then you walked into my life and shattered every wall I'd built. You made me remember what it feels like to be alive. I don't want to be your secret, I said, even as hope bloomed in my chest. You won't be. I promise. I don't know exactly how we'll navigate this, but I want to try. Really try. Not hiding. Not pretending. She took my hands. I love you, Elena Martinez. I'm terrified and probably making a huge mistake, but I love you. And I'm done pretending I don't. You love me? The words hadn't quite sunk in. Desperately. Completely. Inconveniently. She laughed through her tears. From the moment you told me I'd forgotten how to love music, how could I not fall for someone with that much fire? I kissed her again, softer this time, savoring it. I love you too. Even when you're stubborn and scared and trying to push me away. Especially then? Especially then. The terrace door opened behind us, and we sprang apart old habits dying hard. But it was only Victoria's assistant, Margaret, who'd been with the family for 20 years. Miss Sinclair. They're about to start the auction, and she stopped, taking in our tear-stained faces, our swollen lips, the way we were standing just a fraction too close. Oh. Victoria straightened, finding her composure. Margaret. It's about damn time, Margaret said, surprising us both. I've watched you make yourself miserable for years. If this young woman makes you happy, then good. Victoria looked stunned. You knew? Sweetheart, I've known you were gay since you were 16 and insisted Chloe from your writing class was just a very good friend, despite mooning over her at every opportunity. Margaret smiled gently. Your father knew too. He just wanted you to be happy. He would have loved that you found someone who brings music back into your life. Victoria's composure crumbled again. He never said anything. He was waiting for you to trust him enough to tell him yourself. And then he got sick and you got busy and... Margaret trailed off. But he would want this for you. Both of this, the love and the bravery to live authentically. The board will deal with it. And if they can't, they can find a new CEO. You're irreplaceable, Victoria. They'd be fools to lose you over who you love. After Margaret left to give us privacy, Victoria and I stood there processing everything. I need to go back in there, Victoria said finally. I need to host this gala. But after, will you come home with me? Really be with me, not just stolen moments? Yes, I said. But first, I think you need to fix your makeup. You look like a beautiful disaster. She laughed, the sound free and genuine. I feel like a beautiful disaster. It's terrifying and wonderful. Get used to it. Love is supposed to be both. We didn't make a formal announcement. Instead, Victoria simply stopped hiding Dot at the next board meeting. When they questioned my salary and position, she looked them in the eye and said, Elena Martinez is the finest violinist I've heard in 10 years. She's also the woman I'm in love with. If anyone has a problem with either of those facts, the door is that way. No one walked out. We attended our cousin's wedding together, my hand in hers, and fielded questions with grace and honesty. Some family members were supportive. Others needed time. We gave them space. The press found out, of course. The tabloids had a field day, Billionaire's secret romance. From Audition to Love, the violinist who captured an heiress's heart. Some coverage was kind. Some was cruel, much of it was invasive. Sources say Martinez is using Sinclair for her money. Victoria read from her tablet one morning, her jaw tight with anger. As if you couldn't have any value beyond my bank account. Let them talk, I said, though it stung. We know the truth. I want to sue every single one of them. That would just make it worse. Better to live our lives so well that they run out of things to say. My own family had mixed reactions. My mother cried with joy once she got past the initial shock. My father was protective, wanting to make sure Victoria treated me well. My younger sister thought it was the most romantic thing she'd ever heard. You're like a Latina Cinderella, she gushed over FaceTime. Except I didn't need rescuing, I corrected. We rescued each other. The orchestra had their own opinions. Some musicians were genuinely happy for us. Others thought I'd gotten the position through nepotism, despite my abilities. Let your playing speak for itself, Victoria advised when I came home frustrated after a particularly tense rehearsal. That's what you told me, remember? That you make the violin sing. She was right, of course. Over the following months, as I continued to perform and prove myself, the skepticism gradually faded. Not entirely, there would always be doubters. But enough that I felt I earned my place. Victoria started playing piano again regularly. She'd set up a music room in her penthouse where we'd spend evenings playing together, her on piano, me on violin. We'd work through sonatas, improvise, or just make noise. It didn't matter. What mattered was the joy on her face, the way music brought her back to herself. I've been thinking, she said one night as we lay in bed, my head on her chest, her fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. About the foundation. What if we expanded its mission? Scholarships for underprivileged music students. Programs in underserved communities. Access to instruments and instruction. Really? You were right about me having advantages. I can't change my past, but I can use my resources to open doors for others. Make sure talented kids don't have to struggle the way you did. I raised my head to look at her. You're serious? Completely. I want to name it after my father. He would have loved the idea. The Jonathan Sinclair Music Initiative. She smiled. What do you think? I think I love you even more than I did 5 minutes ago, which I didn't think was possible. She pulled me up for a kiss. Help me with it. You know what students actually need, what works and what doesn't. We can make a real difference together. Together, I echoed. I like the sound of that. 6 months after that first audition, Victoria and I traveled to her family's estate in the Hamptons for a long weekend. The house was a sprawling Victorian mansion by the ocean, filled with light and the sound of waves. I used to come here as a child, Victoria said as we walked along the beach at sunset. It was the one place I felt truly free. No expectations, no performance. Just me and the music. It's beautiful, I said, though I was watching her face rather than the scenery. Elena, there's something I want to ask you. My heart started beating faster. Okay. She stopped walking and turned to face me. These past 6 months have been the happiest of my life. You've changed everything for me, how I see the world, how I see myself, what I believe is possible. Victoria, let me finish, she said, and I saw her hands were trembling. I know it hasn't been easy. The press, the scrutiny, the judgment. And I know you've sacrificed your privacy to be with me. But you've never complained. You've just loved me through all of it. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. My breath caught. I don't want you to be my girlfriend anymore, Victoria said, and despite the box in her hand, my heart plummeted. Then she dropped to one knee in the sand and my heart soared again. I want you to be my wife. My partner. My family. She opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, a diamond flanked by sapphires, elegant and unexpected, so perfectly us. Elena Martinez, will you marry me? I was crying, laughing, trembling. You're really sure? Because once I say yes, you're stuck with me. All of me. The good and the stubborn and the part that will never stop calling you out when you're being unnecessarily difficult. I'm counting on all of that, Victoria said, smiling through her own tears. Especially the last part. So, what do you say? Yes, I said, pulling her up from the sand. Yes, absolutely yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger and it fit perfectly, of course it did. She'd probably had Margaret secretly measure my other rings. I love you, she whispered against my lips. I love you too. My impossible, brilliant, brave billionaire. Former ice queen, she added. Melted ice queen, I corrected. We spent the rest of the weekend planning and dreaming. We'd get married there at the estate with close family and friends. No press, no spectacle, just us and the people we loved. We'd split our time between the city and the Hamptons. I'd keep performing. She'd keep running the company, but with better balance. We'd build the music initiative together. We'd travel. We'd fight and make up and keep choosing each other every single day. I can't believe this is my life now, I said on our last night there. curled up with Victoria on a porch swing watching the stars. Better or worse than you imagined? Both. Better because it's real and you're real and this love is real. Worse because nothing could have prepared me for how much I could feel, how vulnerable love makes you. Scared? Terrified, I admitted. But the good kind of terrified. Like standing in the wings before a major performance. You know you might fall, but you also might soar. We'll soar, Victoria said confidently. We'll stumble sometimes too, but we'll help each other up. Promise? I promise. She kissed my temple. You know what's funny? I told you that first day that you had no idea what you were playing with. But I was the one who had idea what I was getting into, no? No, I thought I was hiring a violinist. I had no idea I was meeting my forever. We got married in September, almost exactly a year after my audition. The ceremony was small and intimate, just 50 guests in the garden of the Hamptons estate. With the ocean as our backdrop, my mother cried through the entire ceremony. My father walked me down the aisle, leaning close to whisper, "She better be good to you," or she answered to me, "Billionaire or not, she is, Poppy, I promise." Victoria wore a tailored white suit that made her look like a model from a fashion magazine. I wore a flowing gown with lace sleeves that my mother had helped me choose. We'd both cried in the dressing room at the shop. Margaret officiated. She'd gotten ordained online specifically for the occasion, and barely made it through the vows without tearing up. Victoria Sinclair, take you, Elena Martinez. To be my lawfully wedded wife, Victoria said. Her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. I promise to love you when you're challenging me to be better and when you're letting me be myself. I promise to make you laugh even when you're trying to be mad at me. I promise to support your music, your dreams, your fierce independence. I promise to be brave enough to match your courage. And I promise that every single day I will remember that you are the greatest gift I've ever received. I was already sobbing by the time it was my turn. Elena Martinez, take you, Victoria Sinclair. To be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you when you're being difficult and especially when you're being vulnerable. I promise to remind you who you are when you forget. I promise to make music with you in all its forms. I promise to stand beside you in public and in private, in triumph and in struggle. And I promise that I will never, ever let you forget how to sing. We exchanged. Ring simple platinum bands. Engraved with bars of music from the pieces we played together that first night. Bye. The power vested in me by the internet and the state of New York, Margaret said. Her voice thick with emotion. I now pronounce you married. You may kiss your bride. And we did, to applause and cheers and more than a few happy tears from our guests. The reception was a blur of joy. We'd hired the orchestra to play my colleagues who'd become friends. We danced to a string arrangement of At Last while my sister captured it all on video. Mrs. Sinclair, I teased as we swayed together. Actually, I was thinking Martina Sinclair, Victoria said. If that's okay with you. Really? Really. You're not the only one who gets to be proud of where you came from. During dinner, people gave speeches. My father, usually a man of few words, spoke about watching his daughter dream impossible dreams and then achieve them. Victoria's mother, who'd been skeptical at first but had warmed to me, talked about seeing her daughter happy for the first time in years, but it was my little sister's speech that really got me. I remember when Elena was 7, Sophia said, and she heard a violinist at a street fair. She made us stay for the entire performance, dancing and conducting with an imaginary baton. On the way home, she told our parents she was going to be the greatest violinist in the world. And Poppy said, that's a big dream for a little girl. And Elena said, then I'll grow into it. Sophia's eyes found mine across the room. And she did. She grew into her dreams. And Victoria, you're lucky. Because my sister doesn't just grow into her dreams, she makes everyone around her believe in theirs too. Take care of her, or you'll have 2 Martinez women to answer to. Victoria squeezed my hand under the table. Noted, she called back, laughing. Later, after cutting the cake and dancing until my feet hurt and greeting every single guest, Victoria and I escaped to the beach. We walked along the sand in our wedding clothes, barefoot, holding hands, the moonlight turning everything silver. Wife, Victoria said, testing out the word. Wife, I echoed. How does it feel? Right, scary, perfect. She pulled me close. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. For this to be too good to be true. It's not. We're not perfect, but we're real. And that's better. Promise me something, she said seriously. Promise me that even when it gets hard, because it will, you won't stop calling me on my bullshit. You won't let me hide or retreat or pretend I'm fine when I'm not. I promise. If you promise me the same. No more Ice Queen armor. Not with me, deal. She kissed me softly. Ready to start our life together? I've been ready since the day you made me play Mozart. She laughed. Since the day I tried to break you, you mean? Since the day I didn't break. No, Victoria agreed, pulling me toward the house, toward our future. You definitely didn't break. You're the strongest person I know. 5 years later, I stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, adjusting my dress and trying to calm my nerves. You're going to be amazing, Victoria said, appearing beside me. She was there for every important performance, just as I attended her major business events. We'd figured out how to balance our lives, our careers, our love. Easy for you to say. You're not the one performing the world premiere. No, I'm just the one who commissioned it. No pressure. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Seriously, Elena, this concerto is stunning. And you're going to bring it to life like only you can. The concerto she was referring to was a new work I commissioned from a young ladies composer through our foundation. The Jonathan Sinclair Music Initiative had grown beyond our wildest dreams, providing scholarships, instruments, and instruction to thousands of students across the country. This was our first commission work, and I had the honor of performing the premiere. 5 minutes, Ms. Martinez Sinclair, the stage manager, called. Victoria pulled me in for a proper kiss. I love you. Now go make that violin sing. I walked onto the Carnegie Hall stage to thundering applause. The audience was packed: friends, families, students from our programs, music lovers, and critics. But my eyes found Victoria in the front row. And she blew me a kiss. I raised my violin and began to play. The new concerto was called Breaking Through, a piece about struggle and triumph, about finding your voice and refusing to be silenced. It was technically demanding, emotionally raw, and unlike anything I'd ever performed before. And as I played, I thought about that terrified girl from Queens who'd walked into a penthouse with a worn violin case and a chip on her shoulder, who'd stood up to a billionaire and somehow found love in the process, who'd been told she didn't belong but had created her own space anyway. I thought about Victoria, who'd forgotten how to be vulnerable but had learned again, who'd taken off her armor and found that she was stronger without it, who'd chosen love over fear, authenticity over image, happiness over approval. I thought about all the young musicians in the audience who were seeing someone like them on this stage, realizing that their dreams were possible, their voices mattered, their music deserved to be heard. The concerto built to its finale a soaring melody that represented breakthrough, freedom, the moment when you finally, fully, unapologetically become yourself. When the last note faded, there was a moment of perfect silence. Then the audience erupted. People leapt to their feet. The applause went on and on. I saw students crying, saw Victoria beaming with pride, saw my parents clutching each other in joy. I took my bows, gestured to the orchestra, called out the composer. And through it all, I felt Victoria's eyes on me. Felt her love and pride and partnership. After the performance, after the standing ovation and the congratulations and the photographs, we finally made it home to our apartment, a more modest space than Victoria's penthouse, one we'd chosen together, filled with our shared life and memories. I'm so proud of you, Victoria said, pulling me close. You were transcendent tonight. We were, I corrected. This is our dream, our work. You commissioned that piece, you built the program that found that composer. You've given so many kids a chance they wouldn't have had otherwise. We did it together, she agreed. Just like we promised. We'd built a life that neither of us could have imagined alone. The music initiative was thriving. Victoria had stepped back slightly from the company to focus on the foundation and to, as she put it, actually enjoy her life. We traveled, we made music, we fought and made up and kept choosing each other. Do you ever miss it? I asked, referring to her old life. The complete control, the power, the corporate conquests? Sometimes, she admitted. But then I remember what I was like back then. How empty I felt. How much I was missing. She kissed my forehead. I wouldn't trade this life for anything. Not for all the money and power in the world. Even when I'm being stubborn? Especially then. You keep me honest. Keep me real. She pulled back to look at me. Ready for bed? We have that meeting with the new scholarship recipients tomorrow. And I know you'll want to be at your best in a minute. I moved to the piano Victoria's piano from her penthouse. One of the few pieces of furniture she'd insisted on keeping. Play with me? She sat beside me on the bench, our shoulders touching. Just like that first night, we played together a simple melody we'd improvised and refined over the years. One that was uniquely ours. Not Mozart or Chopin or Tchaikovsky, but something we created together. Our love song played in two parts that were separate but harmonized perfectly. When we finished, Victoria rested her head on my shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For walking into my life and refusing to leave. For seeing who I could be when I'd forgotten. For making me brave enough to become that person. Thank you for letting me, I replied. For being willing to change, to grow, to risk everything for love. Best investment I ever made, she said with a smile. Better than your tech portfolio? So much better than my tech portfolio. We sat there in comfortable silence, our hands resting on the piano keys. 5 years married and still discovering new harmonies. Because that's what love is, I'd learned. Not a single moment of falling, but a lifetime of choosing. Not perfection, but the courage to keep trying. Not two people becoming one, but two people learning to sing together while still maintaining their own unique voices. Victoria had once asked me to make her violin sing. Instead, I'd helped her remember how to sing herself, and she'd helped me believe that I deserved to be heard. That first audition, when she'd mocked me and challenged me and unknowingly changed both our lives forever. She told me I had no idea what I was playing with. She was right. I hadn't known I was playing with my future. With love. With the person who would help me become the fullest version of myself, but I played anyway. With all my heart, holding nothing back. And in the end, that made all the difference.